more than 50% of people they hire leave within the first year.
Yeah. And when you think about if your goal is to grow your business and scale your business, you're taking time away from doing that if you're having to hire, having to train, and it just makes it that much harder to get ahead.
It's also the reality of the situation that dental technology or dental laboratories have a hard time finding staff. Hi, my name is Paulo Calao, CEO of Evident, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast, Dentistry 3.0, The Next Wave. And it's my pleasure this morning, a bit of a ringer, but I'll introduce you to her. Her name is Chloe Gordon, and she's actually the COO of Evident. And good morning, Chloe.
Good morning.
The reason I asked Chloe to join us is because she's probably, at least in our organization, she probably has the most experience speaking with laboratories regarding automation. And I think her insights into what she sees every day, as well as the challenges that laboratories have, should give us at least a framework for future discussions. So thanks again, Chloe. I'm really happy to have you here.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
And the first question, of course, is what do you see out there when you talk to dental labs about the challenges they're having today?
Well, you see a lot of things, but I think the biggest thing is you see a group of people that love the industry, that see there's a lot of changes happening and are really open to figuring out what to do, but they're not sure what to do. And so going out there and really understanding what the problems are and what the bottlenecks are in a lab is, the first step in really understanding how they can grow and overcome the adversity that we're seeing in the industry right now.
And I mean, that's very good insight. What are the adversities that you see?
Well, we're seeing a few things. Number one is the labor shortage. I'm talking with dozens and dozens of labs. The first thing that always comes up is labor shortage, whether it's just general staffing for front desk staff, admin team, or even specialized labor technicians. Dental technician schools are closing down, graduating classes are small, so there's not that many technicians coming into the industry. But so staffing issues is number one. Costs are going up, so there's a big concern on how much can you cut before you're affecting patient care, and then all that ties into profitability. Having conversations with lab owners around what keeps them up at night. Profitability is a huge one. You can only squeeze so much out of a penny, and lab owners are, wondering what they can do to make that change.
Well, that's very fair. In fact, I was in a conversation today, and I asked the lab group, what their turnover was, and I mean, the number they gave me was more than 50% of people they hire leave within the first year. And that's part of the natural evolution of, finding people who want to work in the lab industry.
Yeah. And, and when you think about if your goal is to grow your business and scale your business, you're taking time away from doing that if you're having to hire, having to train. And it just makes it that much harder to get ahead. And then one other thing that I forgot to mention was DSO work. DSOs are growing. So a customer that, a dentist that was sending you your, paying your standard pricing for work gets bought by a DSO. The next day, they can now get that same crown for 3/4 less. And traditional labs aren't set up to have a production line that can compete in that market. And so, we were talking with some labs who wanted to get in the DSO market, and the DSOs were asking for a price that was below their, cost to produce that crown. And we always joke with the labs that you'll never make it up on volume with numbers like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the negative, then it's a larger negative with more volume.
And labs sometimes don't see that.
When it comes to workflow and digitization, what are you seeing?
We're seeing that labs are a lot more open to it now. Before the conversation was around bringing technology, into the lab and how to make it work. But now the conversation's evolved to how do you bring these technologies to work together? How do you make it easier? How can you scale your business with the same amount of people or less? Because it comes back to that headache of staffing and people not showing up that really makes it tough for labs wanting to scale. And they're starting to see that there's solutions out there that can help them do that and will reduce the headache of staffing.
Yeah, let's unpack that a bit. And, first and foremost, of course, we're always careful not to get our audience upset that we're talking about staffing, but it's also the reality of the situation that, dental technology or dental laboratories have a hard time finding staff. And
very true.
So let's unpack that a bit. What are you seeing when you talk to lab owners regarding staffing issues?
Well, probably the biggest thing is keeping people, retention and rewarding and growing people that want to be there. Because what generally ends up happening is that people call in sick, people don't show up, and then those that love the lab or wanting to be there, committed to the business, have to do more work and cover for the other people. And so the ones that you're wanting to keep are the ones that are being overworked, that are working crazy hours and are getting burnout. And so part of the conversation is, how do you reshift your perspective on staffing and your team to really be able to pay the people that want to be there, what they're worth and what they deserve, and focus on the group that you can grow to help you hit your targets as you scale your business.
Yeah, and I mean, having been a lab owner of many labs, I mean, I agree. It's a tough business to work in.
It really is.
And I admire all the lab owners and lab technicians out there because it's hard work. And I've always said, if you can make it in the lab business, you can make it anywhere because it's tough.
It really is. I agree with that.
When it comes to workflow, digitization, any trends or patterns you're seeing?
Yes, I would say the trends that we're starting to see is that, like I said earlier, everyone's open to it now. They're realizing that there's different solutions out there. They're realizing that open is key. To be able to connect the different systems that traditionally don't speak together, you need to be able to connect them somehow. And starting at the beginning is the best place to start, by looking at how do you manage your front office? Who enters the case into a lab management software? How long does it take? How are you accepting cases into the lab? We all know there's email, WeTransfer, Dropbox, the portals, your lab management software portals. There's so many different ways. And so what lab owners and lab managers are starting to see is that, how can you take all this information and start bringing it and centralizing it to be able to then set the rest of your team up for success down the production line?
Yeah, I mean, data management and managing the flow of data from one end of the production line to the actual 3D printer mill seems to be one of the new challenges.
It is, and keeping that information, consistent throughout the whole flow, because the chances for human error, for errors and spelling mistakes, or forgetting to move a case down the line, or the pan gets lost in the shuffle, it happens. Everyone's busy, and so if there's a way for tracking that information to keep everything consistent throughout the lab, one of the trends is lab owners want the data. The lab managers want the data, and they can use that to make, real-time decisions on how to best manage the lab.
So, a couple of questions I'm curious about. Is there a scenario where you walked into a lab and met with the team and went, oh my goodness, they need a lot of help? And then vice versa. Is there a scenario where you went, man, these guys know what they're doing? And of course, on a no names basis,
Yeah.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall to just learn more.
Yes, to both of those. And so I'm trying to think the best way to talk through the worst case lab we walked into. It was a lab that was recently purchased, and the previous owner was still there, but had sold the lab. He wanted to retire, but he told the people who bought the lab, don't tell anyone in the lab that the lab's been sold. You're going to freak them out. They're all going to leave. So just filter everything through me. And and they're like, okay, like no problem. But this lab, the previous lab owner was basically holding the new owners hostage by, the new owners were wanting to make all these changes, bring in automations, really kind of digitize the whole lab. And the owner would be like, no, like not doing this, not doing that. I only want to do zirconia, and we only want to work 2 days a week. And, just all of these demands that the new owners just didn't know what to do because they weren't from the lab industry. And so they had to relook at how can you rebuild a lab if everybody leaves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so they decided to, do a completely automated end-to-end workflow that required one person to, oversee the system, paired with, integrated outsourcing to a fabrication partner all the way up to finishing. And while they outsourced the whole thing, they were going to look at rebuilding the lab in case, everyone quit because they realized, the old lab owner was holding them hostage. And, that's not a sustainable way to run a business.
I feel for them. I've been through those scenarios in my lab career, and I'm sure they're having a lot of sleepless nights right now.
Yeah, they're definitely running into some issues, but like we've told them, evidence a partner in making sure that we can solve these problems for them. And since every solution's customized based on the lab's bottlenecks and the lab's issues, they can rest easy that what's being implemented is custom to them. So they're still going to be able to keep the signature of their cases. They're still going to be able to maintain turnaround times, if not improve them, and have a better business for it.
So flip the question around. What's this scenario where you went, wow, these guys really know what they're doing, and they would probably be a good role model for labs of the future?
So there's a few of them, and I think the biggest piece for a lab that we walk out being like, these labs got it, and it comes down to perspective and attitude. We haven't come across a lab that's completely, automated end to end, and there's no room for further automation. There's always bottlenecks, there's always issues, but it's the team that's open-minded and wants to figure it out. They understand that bringing out automations help them work smarter. It's not there to replace the job. It's there to give them space in the day. It helps them leave early, perhaps, take a holiday. And it's there to overall just help the lab. And they're open to trying anything. They're just really excited about it versus labs that are like, hands off of this isn't going to work. And, because we work with so many different labs, you can tell right away what type of people are at the lab. And so labs that you walk away where you're like, these guys got it. This is a great lab. It's when they have a good team that's really, bought into the success of the project.
And is there a pattern that you could say, okay, if a lab has this profile, there's a high probability that they will go digital or they will expand their digital footprint?
it might be a little. Actually, let me rephrase that. I'd say yes. It's generally the larger labs that either they need to change or they're going to die. So it's the smaller labs who might not have run into the issues yet, or maybe the owner still has a bit more of a bandwidth to enter cases himself, or he's been coming in on the weekend for years and it's just part of his routine, and it's manageable based on the time they have. But for these larger labs that are a bit more professionalized and have targets, growth targets, efficiency targets, they're not going to hit them because you can't work harder, you can't work longer, and you need to make the change. And generally at those labs, you have people who have been exposed to technologies that understand what's out there in the industry and are excited to have it come into the lab.
Well, thanks for that insight, Chloe. When you hear the words Dentistry 3.0, the next wave, what comes to your mind?
I'd say what comes to my mind is the next big jump in dentistry. Dentistry has always been, so many steps behind medical, the unsexy industry. No one thinks dentistry exists outside of dentists. And all the cool things that are happening in dental right now with, technology, materials, it's never been more of an exciting time. So when I hear that, I think of what's the next cool thing that's coming that's going to make this industry even more exciting?
Well, on that note, Chloe, thanks for spending a few minutes with us. And I hope you found this discussion helpful or informative to you. Our goal is to make it feel like a fly on the wall, or that our audience is a fly on the wall listening to us as we chat through our days. And this is our first attempt at doing it, and more to follow. I promise you we'll get better at it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.